for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. Asians and Pacific Islanders continue to face real health disparities, often resulting from poor patient-provider communications and cultural stereotypes. For the Asian and Pacific American community, Senate Bill 97 is good public policy, which will result in stronger, culturally competent healthcare that drives lower costs and better health outcomes. I have 3 short testimonials from the APANO members that we've collected. We've collected over 70 testimonials, but we'll only represent 3 today. From a Korean American, hepatitis B disproportionately impacts the Asian community. I never thought to be tested until symptoms from hepatitis B emerged. Had my physician had access to culturally specific health resources, I may have been diagnosed earlier and prevented expensive treatment. From a Filipino American, this is my father's story. We have a higher incidence of colon cancer in our community. I was receiving steroid medication for another condition, which combined with an undiagnosed colon tumor led to unnecessary bleeding and pain. I needed to be informed about cancer screening, what I am at risk for, so I can be properly diagnosed and treated. When my father was treated, they found out the tumor was in him for over 10 years because he was not properly screened. I need my physician to take the time to understand my whole health, and I promise to work to follow a treatment plan because it will reduce my suffering and my bills. My father is now cancer-free because he had a doctor that cared about him and was culturally competent. From a Chinese American, as a child, I had to translate for my mother during her doctor's visits. It was very difficult. I didn't know all the medical terms, and I didn't understand half the things the doctor was saying. It was scary being partly responsible for my mom's health. Since then, I have always looked for doctors who have the cultural competency to seek proper medical translation. When I spoke to this person who gave this testimony, he started actually translating for his mother when he was only 8 years old, which is completely inappropriate for a child to be doing in a healthcare setting. In closing, APANO supports Senate Bill 97 and the amendment being brought forward. It is critical that our healthcare system continues to increase the cultural competency of health professionals. Senate Bill 97 is good public policy which will result in stronger, culturally competent healthcare that drives lower costs and better healthcare and outcomes for Asians, Pacific Islanders, and communities of color in Oregon. Please support Senate Bill 97. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Good afternoon. I too have condensed my testimony, which is under 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairwoman Ms. Anderson and members of the committee for the opportunity to tell my story. I'm Stephanie Montgomery. I'm a member of the Urban League, and I support the amended version of Senate Bill 97. I'm a coma and brain abscess survivor. In September 2008, I suffered a neurological seizure and became comatose. Later, I would learn that wisteria triggered my medical condition. During my 4-month hospitalization, I became familiar with healthcare providers in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Oregon. I received excellent care in all 3 states. However, in Oregon, my care was tainted by culturally incompetent experiences. Imagine a person whose quality of life includes a loving and nurturing family, good health, independence, and mobility, awakens from a 16-day coma and finds everything to which she's physically accustomed impaired. As a coping mechanism to endure the extensive physical, speech, and occupational therapies required for recovery, she begins to rely very heavily upon her visual and auditory acuity. When family members are unavailable to converse, read, or play games with her, she amuses and entertains herself and derives comfort from what she's able to see and hear in her hospital environment. I share my story from this perspective as well as that of a patient learning how to use her muscles again in order to move and control the movements of her mouth, throat, hands, arms, legs, and other body parts. During my recovery, I had multiple experiences that exposed me to unnecessary stretch, which impacted my journey to wellness. In the interest of time, I choose to share this example. This experience occurred one evening at dinner time. My right hand lacked full strength and dexterity in order to feed myself. I had to expend a lot of energy. The seemingly simple acts of picking up a utensil, placing food on it, bringing the food to my mouth, chewing and swallowing the food were tiring. This particular evening I was very hungry and wanted to eat as soon as possible rather than wear myself out using the energy required to feed myself. Before the nurse left my room, I buzzed to request the certified nurse assistant who often fed me. The nurse said to me, "Why are you people so lazy? You know how to feed yourself. Besides, you need to keep practicing." My throat muscles still were sensitive, so I had to weigh the pros and cons of when verbally to express myself. In this instance, I chose to suppress my speech because I knew energy required would interfere with my ability to eat. However, my thoughts were, I made a conscious decision to figure out how to eat my food in a manner that enabled me to avoid fatiguing myself in the process. Why should I be subjected to this nurse's bias? Moreover, how dare she assume to know the reason for my request and presume laziness? I asked the committee to please keep in mind that as a patient, my goal and focus was to get better as soon as possible and to return home to my family. The impact of experiences that add unnecessary emotional and psychological stress to a patient overcoming medical and physical challenges may be immeasurable. However, it is clear and well documented that such experiences often defeat and negatively influence the journey toward wellness. Senate Bill 97 clearly defines cultural competency and therefore provides a baseline and benchmark from which to develop training standards. While some may view my experiences merely as examples of insensitivity on the part of my healthcare providers, I believe otherwise. I am extremely familiar with the subtlety, nuance, and innuendo that underlie and accompany the insensitivity of stereotypical biases. As an African American who is well-educated and well-traveled, both domestically and internationally, I classify my healthcare provider experiences as indicative of classic cultural incompetent behavior. I sincerely hope that hearing my story helps highlight and underscore the necessity of cultural competency as an integral part of a healthcare provider's professional preparation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Shields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery, for your testimony. I think it's important when these type of incidents happen that we know what organization you were seeking care from. Do you feel comfortable telling us where that was?
I prefer to not reveal that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. But one of the things you said at the end, you said this bill clearly defines cultural competency, and it does not. It says that the health authority shall define cultural competency. I've been searching for a definition, and I know it has to be to some degree ambiguous because it has to cover a lot of circumstances, but I've been struggling to find kind of a baseline as to what we're talking about.
I was referencing the original version of Senate Bill 97 that I read, which defined cultural competency, and I'm searching quickly to see if I have that on this sheet. Basically, cultural competency looks at providing sensitivity, awareness, and professional expertise in treating people regardless of whether you're looking at race, language, sexual orientation, socioeconomic, or any other disparity.